Welcome to the Low and Slow podcast.
We're your girls, Crystal and Laken. If you press play today, trust, you made the right decision.
And know whenever you're listening to this, it's exactly the right time.
We invite you to pull up a seat to the conversation, get curious about your current perspective,
and lean in for the opportunity to see yourself in another woman's story.
We created That Girl Magic because we've been where you are.
Here, the talk is real and the breath is steady.
Let's get into your next mindset shift.
Welcome back to the Low and Slow podcast. I'm Laken, and today, ladies, we are going to be talking about this spectrum of discipline to devotion, right? So today we're going to name the exhausting swing that very many women have wrestled with. And that's when you think discipline should feel a certain way, and most likely the way that we've been raised to make it feel, versus how devotion feels. And for a lot of us, for discipline, we've been sold this like grit your teeth and force it, push through regardless of the cost, always living in the future, like forecasting this tomorrow's win. And that's what I'm always focused on. And a lot of times that can take me out of being present and missing out on what's happening right in front of me today.
Yes. Welcome back. I'm Crystal, and this topic is super juicy because devotion is this beautiful pull to be here now in the present, right? But that does not mean that discipline needs to be this negative thing, right? It's actually how do we work with both of these energies to know that they both serve a purpose. And when we're present and when we're attuned and when sometimes when we're all present and there's no plan of what the future looks like, right? Or what the outcomes will look like, or maybe things are blurred, and this feeling of alignment can feel like an avoidance, right? Of like, well, I'm just super present now and somehow it's going to magically happen. I'm going to manifest, right? So we're getting into that juicy topic.
Yeah, we'll often see this pendulum swing of like going from one to the other because of what we see is available to us, right? So that looks like focusing on being future fixated in that grind, and then being like, oh, that feels awful. I'm going to swing all the way back to the other side of like, I'm only going to be in the present moment. But sometimes that can feel like drift, like, oh, why am I not manifesting the things that I want? But I'm, being in alignment and I'm going with the flow and I'm doing all the things. But we have to be able to find somewhere in between, and neither really feels like freedom when we're on each side of the opposite of that spectrum.
Yeah. And just like the spectrum is exactly how it sounds, right? There's similar when we talk about this all or nothing mindset, right? I'm here or I'm here, and finding that in between, that integrating we're always talking about, right? Finding the in between of, not the rigidness, right? And the fluidity of like, okay, well, if this isn't working, am I open to try something else, right? Because what I've been doing is giving me the results that I'm getting. And so can I ask myself, all right, well, what am I willing to try to find myself in that middle? This is where maybe during that process, it feels like that stuck feeling, or like the integration period. Can we have patience to learn what the purpose of devotion and discipline? And so today we're going to show you how discipline naturally will look ahead, right? And it sometimes can starve the presence, but ultimately it is like the training plan or the foundation that allows devotion to anchor in, right? So devotion is anchoring in the now. And then what's the other side of that coin, right? Two truths can be true at one time, that devotion can sometimes fog that path ahead. And when we learn to dance between both of these things, because they do serve a purpose and they have their own importance, together they make this rhythm. It's a supportive container. It's that training plan. It's that, I've worked with both of these things, and now I'm finding my middle ground on that spectrum.
Yeah. And that's where I like to think of it as a paradox, right? Like a discipline devotion paradox, because like you said, we often really struggle with holding combating truths, or that two things can exist simultaneously and even more so complementary of each other. Yeah. And it's almost always the case that when we can use the benefits of each to find somewhere in the middle that is specific to you, right? Because everybody's going to be a little bit different, then it can be that much more powerful. And this is very on brand because we are very good representations of where that is for where we are in our life right now, right? Like I am very much rooted in discipline, and Crystal comes from a place of devotion, and us being mirrors for each other in that way has been really helpful to show the other what's possible and the benefits, but also it can be really triggering at times to be like, oh, that, that doesn't feel good for me, or that, is different, or that doesn't work for me. Right.
Yeah.
So kind of talking through some of that today too, which I think will be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a beautiful opportunity in this episode. This is something where, again, you're hearing from, this is why we have this podcast, to hear real women's stories and how we also relate to this, and how even just recognizing this within a close dynamic or friendship of ours, where we can really use that as an example to show that it doesn't have to be a negative thing, right? Just if one person is more rooted in discipline and the other is more rooted in devotion, like you're perfect in the way that you're designed to be. And that mirror, right? We're not here to essentially have someone else do things how we do them, but what we can mirror to each other is actually the very thing that another woman is wanting in herself, which is really special. So, Lake, let's talk about getting in further, like normalizing, really understanding what discipline and devotion is beyond those big umbrella titles.
Yeah. So for a lot of my high achieving type A ladies, right, discipline was coded as like a forceful nature, a requirement. A lot of this is around seeking safety and feeling the need that I have to always be focused on what's in the future and upcoming to be able to prepare for it. Right. Like I have to have my head on a swivel at all times. I have to make sure that I'm always calculating, always like essentially like I explain like I'm playing chess in my head all the time, right? So it's like, gym at 5 a.m. or you failed because if you didn't get your workout in just right for that hour and a half, then that doesn't, it's not all for naught. Ignoring your exhaustion, like earning your worth is a really big one where this shows up. Like I have to, or earning your rest even more so, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's just not letting yourself rest. Like that's a big one too. But
I feel
that
guilty for it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like the guilt and, that conditioning when you grow up operating that way, a lot of times that gets heavily reinforced because all of your performance is praised. Those are very they're negative, they're rarely ever seen as negative traits, right? Like if I'm always anticipating, always making sure all my I's are dotted and my T's are crossed, it's very rare somebody's be like, you know what? I think that you're just working too hard and you should probably take it easy a little bit and rest. Somebody might say that, but most people are going to be really praising your performance and your drive and like trying to push you, right? And continuing to honor that space. And so and then simultaneously, a lot of times rest is actually framed as weakness, right? It's like, well, you have to keep your competitive edge. You have to outdo other people that you're going against. You have to, practice, practice, practice. If you're working on a sport, you have to study, study, study. If you want to get all A's, it's like all of that is praised constantly. And so that is consistent messaging that tells me, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, even if it doesn't feel good in my nervous system.
Right. Because it's working for you.
Yeah. And then we're taught to mortgage the present for like someday, right? Like the body tells me like, oh, well, someday I'll be able to get to that thing. I tell my clients all the time, and I've been guilty of this too, but it's been my practice of the to-do list will never be done. So you keep telling yourself like, oh, I'll eventually get to that day where I'll be able to take a full rest day and like relax, or I'll eventually be able to get to a point in time where I can take an afternoon nap, or I'll do something for me or get a massage. And it's like, no, it's always going to be in the distance if that's where you keep it. And if you're operating with like a clenched jaw and shallow ass breath and like all this resentment all the time and being upregulated, then it's always going to remain in the someday verse, right? It's not going to ever be today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really powerful what you said, just you relating to it, because this is where the conditioning lives, right? Ultimately, when someone looks at a disciplined person, actually that's working out for them, right? Because discipline is required. And it's, why would I change anything when I'm getting the results that I'm actually wanting? I'm being praised for it. And then on top of that, when we talk about the whole, even from a young age, we start collecting evidence of where discipline has really benefited us. And at what point do we sit here and say, okay, I'm getting these things, and is it going to be at the cost of me? Where this is where, like, when you were talking, I'm like, oh, it's kind of like good girl conditioning, right? Of
Yeah.
like,
Well, and often it's too late, right?
right.
Those don't catch up to you until later on in life. And so
Mm-hmm.
while you have the capacity and the energy and you're not managing children and marriage and
Yes.
everything else, like, oh yeah, I can just keep going and going and going. And like, look at all this praise and positivity. And even if I'm tired, even if I feel like I can't, what does that mean about me? And how's that going to be seen?
Mm-hmm.
And am I still going to be safe or accepted or
Right.
valued if that's never been
Right.
praised?
If I'm not producing an outcome and a result, award or whatever, then next raising the bar, right? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Discipline. Gosh, I mean, even just to start the episode of like two real life examples in front of us, I think, discipline, the praise that it gets early on is not the praise that you actually will. Is the discipline, excuse me, the praise that it gets early on is not actually the praise you will have for it later on.
Yeah.
Because once you understand, like, yeah, it has given you a foundation, and right after you built that foundation, now I can move into devotion, right? So devotion is essentially flipping it. It's
Mm-hmm.
being able to say, like, yeah, you're wanting to be fully present in the moment, right? This is maybe some examples of like, if my body needs to move, if my body tells me I need to move today, then I'll move, right? It's like when my body's asking for it, like I'll
Yeah,
move
this is
when,
like taking it all the way to the other end of the spectrum.
yeah, opposite end. I will incorporate the, like, we talk with our clients all the time of like, in the moment you don't want to write shit down, but I'll journal
Mm-hmm.
about it, when I feel good, right? Or a
Mm-hmm.
gratitude, right? So many women, like, if I just do a gratitude journal, right? But the thing about thing about devotion is it's flipping that discipline completely to the other side. It's you're present, and this can also look like you're so present in the now that something in the future feels like very far off, right? So it's like I can't even put my brain together of what that can look like in the future because I'm going off of what I need right now in the moment. So maybe I am tapping
Mm-hmm.
more into my needs, right? It's kind of like I resonate with this very much. It's like my vibe changes daily, right? And if it's not the vibe, does that mean it doesn't get done? Right. And so this is where it's like with devotion, yeah, things are going to change daily, but so can the results. Like, this is where a lot of times people end up wondering, well, I'm doing all the things now, but why am I not seeing the results that I want? Right. Why can't I manifest? Like, I've been putting attention here every day, right? Doing all the things. And, maybe instead of manifest, change. Our listeners will resonate a lot with change. Why can't I change this? When you think about going to the gym, okay, we go, I'm just gonna, instead of setting a plan of like, I'm gonna go 3 times a week, that's more discipline, right? I have a plan in place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going at this time. It's on the calendar. Devotion will look more like, like today's Monday and I saw a post, like, oh, start Mondays off right. And I'm going to go to the gym and go to the Pilates class, right? But then it's like, you have a crazy week. Friday comes around. Do I want to go today? No, skip it. I'll go next week. Right. So
Yeah.
it's going off of like in the
But in the
moment.
meantime, you're telling yourself, like, I'm going to the gym.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, this is just where you can see the total opposite of discipline. And in that example, it kind of sounds like, well, wait, how could I ever want devotion then if, how could I ever want devotion if that's what that looks like? Well, you can have praise for the devotion when you've built the discipline. And I think, it's not to say that you have to do one versus the other. If anything, yeah, I personally have leaned more into devotion because for my personal upbringing and all, like, discipline didn't feel safe to me. Right. So it's a total opposite of Laken. And I think, if what that has allowed me to do is to be very present in what I need in the moment, is to be very present in what, this relationship with my body, be connected to my intuition, wanting to, give myself that time and attention. And then it's like putting myself in the right container to ultimately my devotion is supported by the discipline. So it's like, this is like infinity, right? These work hand in hand together. It's a dance. It's almost, okay, it's not a salsa because that's too complicated. It's almost like a two-step. It's a two-step together. But yeah, the swing
Yeah. A
is
lot of times,
sometimes a bigger
like the
gap
swing
than we
back and
think.
forth ends up happening because women don't have a full understanding of how to combine the two.
Mm-hmm.
So what usually happens in a predictable nature is we're either conditioned to have that discipline, or at some point it's praised, or it's like the keeping up with the highlight reel of like, oh, well, if I have to compare myself to all these other people and what they're doing, then I have to force myself to do all these things, right? And then you get to a place where you burn out and it feels like shit. And then you go to the opposite end of like, well, I'm just going to do, I'm just going to do what feels right. And then you get to a place where it's like, well, now I don't have any structure and I'm not getting to where I want to be. And I feel a little bit aimless, right? And then I'm going to shame myself because I'm not getting the results that I actually want. And then I'm going to force myself to go back to being forceful, and around we go until we are able to educate ourselves and be open to, okay, both can coexist.
Yes. I want to insert a personal example and testimony here before we move on. Before we moved in together, before we even started That Girl Magic, I was operating in the swing, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
And, being in the gym and doing all the things, right? And like you do all the things. And then once I left the gym and was in a transition, it was like I was still working out, but I didn't have the same structure that I had given myself before, right? And when we started living together, we then, I was building that back, but I had been in a place where I swung so far to the opposite side. And ultimately, I didn't like how that felt either, right? Again, operating on both sides of the spectrum. But then once I was able to come back and be able to have a structure in place where I knew, okay, I have a plan. I'm strength training 4 days a week and I take a rest day on Wednesday. And ultimately I know, I'm going back to cycle sensing, right? And being able to connect with my menstrual cycle and see what I need. And just knowing that even just moving my body in whatever kind of way, whether it's mobility or walks, whatever, right? I'm giving the example of, health and like the gym, because I think a lot of our listeners can relate to that. But it's even just looking back at a time where I could recognize myself going back and forth in that. And then now that has been established, like, no, it's almost like recognizing your default. Like, this is now the default. And now, like, this is the programming that I have. Like, I've tried it this way. And that middle is like, this is the best recipe that works for me. It's like what's the little kid's story? The porridge. It's too hot.
Goldilocks.
That one. I couldn't think of the name. Too hot, too cold, just right. Right? Mm-hmm. Determining your just right. We need the awareness first, right? So we need to know that, can I be aware that discipline is ultimately a future struggle and a present absence? Okay. That's discipline. Devotion is a present immersion. You're here, right? But then the future looks really foggy, right? Mm-hmm. So it's being able to, crack. This is where change starts. And if you're in one of those places where it looks like one or the other, right? Know that it's not just one or the other. It's not black and white. It's actually gray. And this quick check in to see like, well, where am I living right now? Ask myself, am I living in the future? Am I living in the present? And the present is going to be more attached to the devotion. The future is going to be more attached to the discipline. And we're going to work through how we can give you a supportive container to blend those two together to make that gray palette rather than the black and white or the all or nothing mindset.
Yeah. And this is really nuanced and customized per person, right? Like everybody's going to be a little bit different. Like a lot of people would look at the way that I operate now and think that I'm at the far end of discipline, right? But comparatively to where I was in a previous season of my life, I'm way more in the middle towards devotion than I've ever been, right? Mm-hmm. It used to be I was grinding all the time, no matter what. And my body, it was just like, well, tough shit. Like, keep going because this is what we do, right? And now it's like I'm much more open to addressing my needs, listening to my body, honoring rest when I need it, maybe even adjusting my workout schedule, right? or like my nutrition demands, like where before I was much more rigid in that. Like I will accommodate things in the present much more because I recognize the importance of it. And it's like when you live in the future for long enough, you do find yourself missing out on things in the present, and you will look back and realize like, I'll never get that time back. And it will be, nobody wants to have that feeling, right? It's not a
Yeah.
good feeling. It's literal FOMO, but of the past.
Yeah.
And so when we look at like discipline as a future container, as opposed to just having blinders on to the future, this is where we have to get away from the idea that discipline is punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot
Hi,
of women
Crystal
operate
Pressfield.
because, yeah, well, that's the way that it was enforced, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like there were, if you didn't do the thing, if you
Mm-hmm.
didn't push, if you didn't get the results, right, then there were negative consequences associated with it. So it does feel very punitive in a way. And instead of it being punishment, can we, as grown women and as aware women, self-aware women, can we start to view it as a future container to be able to exist in the present through, right? But again, like you said, providing that structure. So like
Right.
if we were to think about like
An opportunity,
like a,
future opportunity.
yeah, like a garden,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you're growing something and you have like a garden box or you're setting up like edges, right, to like hold the soil so that way you can maintain the nutrients within the soil and have optimal growth, right? Like without the edges, the devotion or that nutrient dense soil is going to like sprawl out and it doesn't really have a container to be able to have things ideally look the way that you want them to when you get that end outcome that you're searching for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think there's something that you touched on there that I wanted to say, and now it has escaped me. We'll come back. It's going to come back around the carousel. So, you know, this is where you can affirm devotion more when it shows up if you provide yourself that container, like Laken said, right? So when discipline is the stewardship or the training plan or is the foundation, I like foundation, right? Similar when
Mhm.
you're building a house. If it's the foundation, it's going to allow when everything starts to build on top of it to have a solid, groundwork laid, right? So it's protecting your body today, right? Today's body, this present moment for what you want tomorrow's vision to look like. We've all heard this where women have said, I don't want to go to the gym. Oh my God, I really don't want to go to the gym right now. And I always feel better after I do it. Right. So it's
Mhm.
like, it's not about ignoring that your body doesn't want to go to the gym. It's sometimes about, okay, like I'm going however I need to move today and whatever that looks like, I'm honoring that and I'm going and I will feel better about how I did it rather than deciding, oh, I'm not going to go today and then shitting on myself for it later. Right. So it's protecting today's body for tomorrow's vision. If you can think about it as that way, that's the opportunity. That's the flower analogy that she was giving, right? If I want to see those flowers come up, well, then I have to provide the proper container, the proper environment, right? I said that I've said this recently to a lot of clients and I can see in their eyes and their language and their breathing, it's broken their brain. Our mind really creates the environment that our body responds to, right? So if we can take looking at discipline and devotion in that way, if we are devoted to what this body is, what we want to happen within this body, what we want this body to feel like, what we want this body to give us the results on, right? Then we have to honor the environment that we're creating in our mind. And that's where discipline is the foundation for that, right? Where we honor those commitments that we make to ourselves.
Yeah, and if there's a story or a core belief that's rooted in, okay, my childhood wired this basically to say like if I perform today, then I can earn love tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Supportive discipline is going to reframe that and ask, okay, what rep can I put in place that honors both now and tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that may look like if I have a goal of running a marathon, I may start with 10-minute walks because I'm meeting myself where I am, and that meets my current needs, but also the sustainability of what I'm looking to in the future, right? And then I can progress that with a plan and then stick to it as opposed to saying, okay, well, I'm going to go out and try to run 5 miles on my first day. And if I can't, then just isn't for me,
Yeah.
right? Or, like fixating on this happens so much, like going back to the gym analogy, just because this is something that so many of our clients struggle with of, I'm going to go to the gym early in the morning before work because that's the only time I told myself that I'm giving myself, right? And I'm going to fixate on how much I hate it. And I hate getting up out of bed when it's dark and cold outside. And I hate going to the gym. And
But
I
it's the
hate
only
feeling
time I
like,
have.
you know,
It's the only
yeah,
time I
everybody
have.
looking at me, right? But and then it's going to happen twice during the week because that's how many times out of the week I can force it, right? But I'm going to focus on how much I can't stand doing it. And then it ends up not being sustainable. So the first time that there's an upset, the first time that there's anything that throws me off, derails me, my kid is sick and, I have to make other arrangements in the morning, then it falls off, right? As opposed to, okay, if I can start to implement something that I actually enjoy doing, even if it's like a different form of fitness than what I'm told is the ideal, build consistency first, right? Like, can I allow discipline to hold the future idea of what I want? So I'm working my way up to that, but then devotion honors what do I need right now just to keep that going, so that way I can get to the place that I'm telling myself I need to be. So we have consistent energy and we don't have this resentment around the thing we're trying to force ourselves to do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It did come back around on the carousel, and I say that out
It,
loud because I know maybe this happens for a lot of women. It definitely happens to me, and I have to just acknowledge it when it does. So it will come back when you start to acknowledge it. You mentioned we have to stop viewing discipline as punishment. And when we can see it as the future container, when we can see it as the opportunity, I think first question of when we're bringing this awareness and we're even addressing it as an opportunity, we have to, like, again, let's take a look at the word discipline, right? Like, what does discipline mean to me? We ask all the time, like, what is mindset to you, right? And then we give you a simple definition. A lot of times, what we think the definition of that word means is very complicated. Why? Because we have stories, we have experiences, we have past evidence we collected that has been attached to that. So whether it's been similar to Laken or I's story where, it's been praised, right? Or for me, discipline was a parental figure that was not safe, right? Discipline was the whole thing around it being triggered, right? So when discipline feels triggering, right, can I be able to hold the space for why I even see it as that? And I think what's really powerful when you were talking about that I can now say back to my past self is that once I started to hold space for how I was defining discipline, I then was able to see that that doesn't have to be my discipline, right? And I think that's something that we just are taking that, like, oh, this must be what discipline means because this is all I've ever known, right? It's unfamiliar, it's uncomfortable. But when I started to build that for myself in whatever capacity, shape, or form that looked like, I was creating my discipline. So you can redefine if there's a definition of discipline or devotion, similar for you with devotion, right? If you've said this before of like, well, if I operate in that space, then shit never gets done. Right?
Right.
So it's like we can ultimately redefine what that has looked like. And it's not to say that there's a parental figure always attached to that. That's my example personally. But it is when I decided to move out of that victim mentality, right? Even though the victim mentality does not mean you were not ever a victim. The victim mentality means that because of that, this is happening to you, right? And when you can move out of that and be able to say, okay, well, this is how that was. That does not have to mean that's what it is for me. I get to redefine what that looks like. And that, what a beautiful space that is. It's like, oh, I get to develop my own discipline, my own container, my own training plan. And it makes, integrating these tools, it's actually, you start to collect evidence, and then that's what builds your self-trust. And that's what builds the, acknowledgement of your needs and prioritizing yourself. So I had to put
Yeah,
that tidbit
but
in there.
that's why the awareness is so important,
Yeah,
because we have to be able to understand that in order to be coming from a place that we can even craft an alternative version for ourselves,
right.
right? Like, I very much recognize that when I am working to operate more towards devotion and being more in the present, I'm constantly calculating a cost associated with what that means about what I'm giving up in the future, because I'm still very focused on the future, even when I'm trying to tug myself back to the present, right?
Yeah.
And that's not ideal for me. And it's a practice. And the awareness of it is what's going to allow me to implement and test and practice different versions of what my devotion needs to look like, as opposed to telling myself it can only look a certain way, or it only looks the way that I see other people practice it,
Right.
or it's just not going to work for me.
Yeah, and I think to our point, when we've, identified this within each other, right? The mirrors, just, when you look in a mirror, it's like the mirrors that when you go to the I mean, who goes to malls anymore, but you go in the mirror and there's like the front mirror and then they have the two side ones, kind of like the trifold mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can think of, women around you as these mirrors, right? What works for that woman may not work for you, right? And you have your own trifold mirror that you can have different views and perspectives of what this can look like, and ultimately seeing it in another woman is actually a permission slip. That is, it exists, and it's your opportunity to define yours. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're an artist. It's not black. It's not white. You get to come up with what your color of gray looks like. There's charcoal, there's light, there's sky. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's dig a little bit more into devotion.
Okay. So with devotion, devotion is a present rhythm, right? This is ultimate care that is sustaining you. So there's magic in devotion, right? There's magic in presence. Like, I'm very much present to the things that are calling to my attention. And it's being able to give whatever moment that is presenting itself a full yes. I mean, think about with children, right? Like, their children has a need, and like the mom present, I can give you what you need, right? Solo, though, sometimes this can be future blinding or blurring, right? So we gave the analogy earlier of feeling, if it felt aligned, maybe in your schedule that day, that I have a heavy day and you know what, I just need to take this time for me. And maybe this meant skipping the gym. But then enough of those times add up, right? Maybe one day that's valid, right? But enough of those times add up. And then you're realizing, oh shit, I've skipped every Monday when I said I was going to do something. And 6 weeks later, I'm wondering why, and that was my hip thrust or deadlift day or whatever, like a specific thing that you talked yourself into getting out of, right? And 6 weeks later, you're surprised that this intentional effort that you're making towards, building strength is not there, right? So this is where, like, with devotion can lead you. Devotion is an amazing thing. And honestly, I'm so grateful that I have it. And if I'm honest, right, devotion is not enough. And I don't like to use the negation there, but it's not enough to get to the end result, right? It's something that is very valuable, but just like in a partnership, I need one, I need the other one. I need 1 + 1 to make 2. I don't just have one by itself. And if anything, like we mentioned, it's the dance that when I can have that future present moment to know what I need to do. I want you to think about it of like the gym analogy that we said. I know what I need to do during the day. That's the habits. That's drinking the water. That's like, flowing into, okay, maybe you got your period, right? What do I need? Maybe I'm adjusting my food, right? What am I giving myself in the now so that ultimately, if I have the proper container, right, that rhythm that I can start to, right, the momentum that I can get into will then give me that end result, right? So devotion is leading you while discipline is supporting you, right? It's like a partnership. Like, I want you to think of, we talk about male and female dynamics. The male is the head, right? The female is the neck, right? So like, if discipline is actually what the neck is, right? And the head.
Yeah, discipline is leading, and the devotion is supporting.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like I mentioned, in the example that I gave, that's why the practice is important, because devotion requires reps in order for you to be able to provide the evidence to your nervous system that it can feel safe and that it can feel okay to balance both of those, right? So, for example, like, I'm trying to be more devoted to my nighttime ritual to be able, I'm let me reverse that. I am being more devoted to my sleep schedule, which requires me to put different reps in place leading up to that time that I'm committing myself to, right? So like the structure is the bedtime. That's the discipline of like, I want to be in bed by this time. The devotion is, what does my ritual look like that's going to support that bedtime that I'm trying to get to, right? To give me the outcome that I'm desiring. And it requires both, because if I'm just like, all right, I'm going to force everything and go, 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 and always live in the future, and then slams the laptop shut and tries to immediately get in the shower and go to bed, it's like, I'm not going to actually get good sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're
Right? What does it
you're
look like?
operating on
Yeah,
stress and
going
like
up
the
to
time
it.
clock and all the things, right? This is where like
And if I'm fearing it, right? Like it's the
it's the
anxiety.
anxiety,
And I've lived in that too of like,
anticipation.
I have to get to bed right now, right? It's like, that doesn't, I'm not actually getting what I want to out of that. That's not, again, that's also not the outcome that I'm desiring.
Yeah, when you just said that, it reminds me of when sometimes we're hanging out or whatever, and then you'll just tell me like it'll be out of nowhere. I gotta go to bed, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, bye. And like, and it's like, and it's a funny example that we use, but like think about where this can show up in micro
Because it
forms
goes back
like
to what we
that.
said before, right? Of like, if I say it, then it will happen. So like, I'm making an announcement to fucking force myself to do it.
Right. We have Alexa tell us, goddesses, it's time to retire to your quarters, right? At a specific
Yeah.
time, just to remind us that, like, hey, I get you're in the present here, and your future self is telling you now would be an appropriate time to start winding down, doing all the things, right? This is where I think if we can, I know we're giving examples and diving in deeper here, but devotion is more, I want you to tap into the feelings, right? The signals, right? And then discipline is more of the thinking, the thoughts, right? Like what are these things that are happening that is the training plan that needs to happen? But the feelings are very important as well. When we disregard the feelings, right? Then that leaves us suppressed, that leaves us not acknowledged, that eventually will catch up to us. And what does that do? It becomes a cost. So,
Yeah.
It's not that similar in story work, right? We have to separate the thoughts, we have to separate the feelings. And operating on that spectrum, neither can feel like freedom without the other, because then you get into the whole thing of like we're anticipating, right? We're anticipating it's the anxiousness, the anxiety, like, and honestly, it's mentally fucking exhausting. It's mentally and emotionally exhausting.
Yeah. And talk about the myths a little bit though.
Okay. So, all right, within like these rituals, right? I love this word, alignment. Right? If it's aligned for me, right? Or if it's meant for me, it will be easy.
Yeah.
And real talk, discipline shows up even when it's like, meh, like I don't feel like doing it, right? But this is when you do it anyway, right? Because
you're devoted to yourself.
You're devoted to yourself, right? I'm worthy.
Yeah.
I know what I want at the end of this. Similar within this within a lot of our clients that are in programs where it's like, all right, I'm in a 6 to year long container, right? That's the discipline. And it's not what a lot of women are doing is not sexy, right? And it takes being able to still show up on the days that we really don't want to. And this is where the rewiring comes in with, even though, right, can I acknowledge in the moment, this is something I do often. Hey, I'm checking in with me. Even though I feel like this and I get you feel like this, I'm still showing up for my best self, right? So even if I'm feeling tired, does that mean I don't honor my commitments of what I have to do on my schedule? Like, no, right? Okay, well, I'm going to be more mindful of that later, and I'm going to incorporate, go to bed earlier, whatever, right? It's being able to incorporate these different rituals where I'm very much a hand to my heart, other hand right over my stomach, and let myself know that, hey, I understand what you're feeling right now. And even though we're feeling this way, we're still going to take action, right? That's rewiring.
Well, and the devotion is the titration, right? Like it's the discipline is, this is the thing that we said we were going to do.
Yes.
And then the devotion is, all right, I can do a version of this today. So
right.
The far end of discipline is like, yeah, the all or nothing mentality, and the far end of devotion is like, fuck it, not at all, because I'm mailing it in day. Like it's off, the energy's off. I'm not doing it. Right. And when we meet in the middle of like, okay, this is what I said I was going to do. This is what feels supportive to me today. Then we can create that consistency.
Right. And it's slowing down enough to be able to then incorporate that as a ritual, right? To check in with yourself and say, okay, remind myself if this is what I wanted to do. And it's not just disregarding the discipline and saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Like the rebel, right? Of like, no, I'm not going to go to
Mm-hmm.
bed on time. It's also being able to say, okay, well, what does this look like? I want to go to bed on time and I do want to finish this social, have another 5 minutes and then I'm done, right? I'm going to bed, I'm
Mm-hmm.
shutting it off, right? So it's naming really what's working of like, oh, okay, I know. Like if you have an early morning tomorrow, I want to support my future self and I'm going to acknowledge
Right.
that. And it's taking the next best micro step, right? I think something in our form that we have clients fill out is, what's one small step you would take? We don't ask
Mm-hmm.
ourselves that enough. And I guarantee you, a lot of times when we read that, it's a big fucking step that people say. It's right, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the next best step is really just one foot in front of the other. It's being able to stop on time. It's being able to, schedule in some recovery, schedule in getting better sleep, right? Going on a walk. Maybe you just got your period and maybe a couple days before your period, we're not feeling it, right? But it's like, does that mean I don't work out that day? Or does that mean, no, well, I want to honor my body and what I'm feeling. And this may look like I'm going to do a mobility and I'm going to go on a long 45-minute walk, right? And then,
Yeah. It's ba baby steps.
okay, Olivia Dean. Yeah. Shout out to, I'm like, we just need to shout out Brina on the episode. Anytime that has to deal with like Olivia Dean, menstrual cycle coach, we're going to shout her out. But yeah, the next best steps or those baby steps is devotion too. That's what's building the momentum. That's what's allowing it to become a dance and a flow, right? That's why flow is attached to devotion. And maybe we're redefining that force that's attached to discipline. It doesn't have to be force, right? It could
Yeah.
be let's get another word. It doesn't have to be force. Foundation. Let's just do another word. It doesn't have to be force. It could be the foundation. It could be that supportive container.
Yeah. The container. Yeah. So like, I like to think about them also as like the what and the why, right? So like discipline is the what, that's focusing on like what I'm trying to do, and devotion keeps me rooted in my why. Why am I trying to do this? Why is this the outcome that I want? It's reminding me again. So if the what is I want a certain outcome when it comes to my health, for example, the devotion is the why behind that. Why is this thing important to me, and can that keep me on target to build these rituals that meet me where I am currently in my present, and also keep that future idea or goal in mind along the way as I go, right? So it's keeping me rooted in that. So I can be both in the present and in the future when it comes to my needs. Because devotion without discipline is very dreamy la la
Fleeting.
land. Yeah. All right. And then discipline without devotion is very much like drudgery, like just a slow grind. It's like, it's not fucking fun.
On
It
the way to
sucks.
burnout.
And so, yeah. And so when we can put them together, then we can create this really beautiful rhythm. And so when we start to look at what does that actually look like to hold both and have a rhythm without swinging from one side to the other, this big pendulum swing, that's when we have to decide if we can let the container look ahead while we let the devotion, like I said, kind of guide that process as we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is something that's really big when you know the why, the how is going to follow. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if we cannot focus on what is working, right? And I think when things need adjusting, right? Because the discipline is going to allow you to adjust. It's going to tell you very quickly if it's working or if it's not, right? And so, just letting the container allow you to look ahead. It's kind of like the like a lighthouse, right? The lighthouse is really paving, like shining up things like, hey, it's here, right? And it's guiding you. It's guiding you along the way, so that when devotion can guide the how. So before you are actually achieving the thing that you want, it's, can I acknowledge what's working, and can I have gratitude for like celebrating the wins along the way? When can I acknowledge when I did that thing, right? When I still honored my commitment? Can I acknowledge that, okay, I maybe didn't want to go to the gym today, but I still went and it feels really good that I went, right? The tiny
Mm-hmm.
wins, and not always having, I think this is a really big point, because I think a lot of women can find themselves here subconsciously. It's the courage to return to something without needing the drama of it, of like it's this big thing that came out and
Mm-hmm.
now it's like I have to, right? Like this big thing happened with my health and now I have to do the thing, right? Like it's like, can I, all right, or the whole thing of like a fall off of the wagon, right? It doesn't have to be this big
Yeah.
catastrophe,
Starting
right?
over, like starting over
Yeah,
again and again and again.
yeah. Or like, I did a program, and this is like, it's like being able to, before you begin, like know that, all right, I'm collecting, right? I'm collecting all these tiny little wins and, like if this is what it was then, and can I allow the devotion to guide my next best step, right? Those baby steps. So let's talk about on the daily, each morning, maybe this is asking yourself, what's the devotion today? Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
um what is the rhythm that I want to get into? Like you have discipline as your container, right? And so what's the um
Like, can you look at your to-do list essentially,
yes.
identify your top priorities, and then ask yourself, like, what
What
is
is
available to
yes,
me today? What's my
thank you.
capacity today look like? What could a win look like?
Hmm.
And what version of this is realistic for me today, right? What would it look like if I were devoted and supportive to myself instead of just saying this shit has to happen no matter what?
Yes. Yeah. So maybe this looks like, and what I was trying to say, like on a daily practice is like, I do this often. I take a look at what's on my calendar for the day and what's going to support me, right? I'm going to make sure to have my morning routine. I'm going to make sure to eat well. I have support myself, move my body, right? And what are the things that it's not have to happen, that get to happen in order to support what's on my plate that day, right? It's being flexible, that it's like, oh, I can have this time here for myself and I'm going to make sure to have that break, right? So I can reset, right? Because I know I'm going to be on back-to-back calls or whatever, right? So it's being able to acknowledge what your nervous system needs, right? And being able to say like, okay, I can be in my present and I can create what safety is needed to have and what capacity is needed to get things done. And I can be in more of a rhythm rather than in this rigidity of like disregard how I'm feeling, disregard like this is a really good thing to use when things are busy, right? Like let's say
Mm-hmm.
you're scheduling like a therapy session. It's not ideal to have a therapy session and then have, right immediately after all of your things. Can you give yourself a little bit of space? Right? Like, oh, I'm going to make sure I have maybe like a 30 to an hour minute window if that's available, right? This will look
Yeah.
different for everyone, but it's basically like checking in with what's the need here, right? And how can I, again, what is it in this moment I need right now? Can I give that to myself in some capacity so that it creates that safety, which then allows me to have even more capacity for what the next day or the next thing that comes up looks like.
Yeah, and like we talked about, a little bit earlier, we've both swung. We've both
Yeah.
been in places where we've either been forcing or where we've been, feeling like we're drifting a little bit. And the balance isn't about seeking perfection or the exact right thing. And this is going to change in different seasons of your life. So again, it's an ongoing practice. So it's all about sustainability.
Mm.
And essentially, discipline is going to protect devotions now or presence, and devotion is going to be able to soften disciplines tomorrow. So it's not just all or nothing. It's not all in the moment or just what's going to happen tomorrow that I'm focused on, or kind of anticipate or prevent the, the consequences or seek outcomes in the future. It is figuring out how to operate in both, so that way you feel complete and you're showing up not only for yourself, but once your capacity is more full, then you can be able to be present for others as well.
Right. It's kind of like, can we start to befriend, right? Let's redefine discipline. Start to befriend
Mm-hmm.
it. Similar to the inner mean girl, right? Start to befriend it so that when discipline says, I got your back, devotion on the other side says, thanks for having my back. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the dance. Similar within a friendship, right? Of like, you ultimately want to be present in the relationship, right? And being present, like each are going to come with a cost, but can I find what my mixture, my flow, my rhythm looks like so that the cost isn't the freedom, and I can get that with having both in play.
Yeah, and finding that takes steps, right? Like if you were to think
Reps.
about creating that awareness, right? So that might take identifying some things for yourself. You might have to write some shit down, ladies. It's crazy, but right, like if I were to start to ask myself questions and get curious with, all right, discipline feels the way that it does for me, whether that's punishment, whether that's future forecasting constantly, whether that's overwhelm, because fill in the blank, right? Whatever the old rule is, wherever the old narrative is, like get curious with yourself about what that looks like. And it might help to pick one domain at a time. So whether it's focused on health or business or in relationships or stuff at home, right? Like try not to stack too many things all together and apply this across multiple domains at once, because then you're not going to be able to get as specific. So it helps to target one area that maybe feels the biggest struggle right now, and then ask yourself questions about what does discipline feel like in that area. And then you can start to set your container, right? So create, like I always talk about, what is the minimum viable rep, right? Like what is the thing that we can guarantee that we can show up with on our worst day? And then provide yourself with some commitment around, okay, if I recognize that that is what I could do on my worst day, then I'm 9 out of 10 confident that I can make that happen. All right, I'm going to commit to it. And then can I set a realistic timeline around it that feels okay for my nervous system? So it doesn't feel like it's putting me in panic mode, right? It's like, okay, I'm pretty confident that's going to happen. And I'm also going to put a stop time on it so that I'm not going to continue to push myself past what's realistic for my capacity in that given time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And so then let's now with that then determine those steps, right? The devotion steps. So devotion is like incorporating the rituals we talked about, right? Acknowledging what's coming up, like, okay, holding space for that before creating a story about what it means about you, right? Can I hold space for it? Maybe that might feel a little bit uncomfortable. Similar, you're going to have to write some shit down, right? It's not that it's blatantly different than discipline, but it's then reminding yourself, like it's incorporating the nervous system, right? Discipline is the thinking. Devotion is the feeling. So can I come to safety within my body, all right? And be able to acknowledge, well, I'm what that future thing is. Like, okay, I'm showing up for my future self today, right? I'm building my strength, right? I'm whatever it is, insert what you want, and then also name one thing that's working for you, right? I'm showing up for my future self today, and so I'm strength training at this time, right? Like it's incorporating the body and letting her know, hey, I'm not disregarding you by doing this. This is what we're doing. Right. This is why.
Well, and how good it feels afterwards,
Correct.
right? Like what's the benefit that you get from it?
Right. What's the benefit? Exactly. What is not so much the outcome, but like what's working now in the moment that's going to get you there. Right. Like what do we
like what feels good about it? Like so many times clients, focus so much on the anticipation and building up to the thing, right? Of like, oh, I don't want to do this. It's not going to feel good. I'm going to be sore. I'm going to be tired. Like it's going to be hard, all the negative components. And it's like, can we start to intentionally shift the focus to how do you feel when you've completed it? How do you feel when you celebrate the win? How do you feel when you meet yourself where you are?
Right. I think as you were saying that, I'm like, it's the reframe of when this happens, of like doing the opposite. Instead of I don't want to do that because it's going to feel like this. Okay, I honor it feels like this now. And can I focus on when I say I don't want to, I'm putting my mind, which is the discipline, in the direction of the opposite thing that I want to go to. So can I say it's not that I don't want to do this. Well, let's incorporate like I do want to do this, or I'm doing this because blah, blah, blah. Right. And it's going to feel
and the same
like
can be said about
that.
Other things like outside of the gym. Like it could be like a difficult conversation that you don't want to have, or you have to voice your needs. How much better do you feel? How much relief do you feel on the other side of that, as opposed to, oh, it's gonna, it's not gonna feel good to do it.
I don't want to talk about this because it's going to be this. Insert the negative outcome, and that's what you're focused on. But I'm relieving myself of feeling like this now. I'm speaking my need, right? I'm handling this situation differently than how I did before, right? So, incorporating that ritual, being able to, this is where we come into the breath too, like regulating ourselves. The nervous system is a huge thing. And I think, with a lot of women, we've talked about this in previous episodes, where it's not about, can we look at the feelings as signals? It is not about disregarding those things. It's about
Mm-hmm.
tapping into what are we feeling? What is the need that is attached to that feeling? Once we identify the need, it's like, okay, what are some of the, can I start to regulate what that need looks like? Like regulate safety in my body for having that need. And can I also put some, when you go bowling, the bumpers or guardrails, right? Like when you're
Yeah.
driving, like, can I put some of those up that keep me focused or like loyal to myself, right? That's building my self trust. So this is like, if someone maybe asks you, maybe you're at capacity, right? Or, there's a lot of commitments. We're in the month of December. There's a lot of commitments or whatever coming up, and we may feel the need to give an answer right on the spot when someone invites us to something, right? Can I feel into like, oh my God, I'm at capacity right now and I want to say yes, but I think that will really cost me later. Can I just, all right, I'm not going to commit on the spot. Like, is it okay if I confirm with you tomorrow? Is it okay if I
Mm-hmm.
get back to you on that? Right. So it's inserting that pause phrase to like, give yourself the space to tap into the feeling first. Then it's
Yeah, like if
also
the default is always a yes,
right,
like a,
right.
you know what I mean? If you're a yes chef kind of girl, like
Mhm.
let's reframe that a little bit and be like, we're gonna
Right.
pause
I'm going to
and
take a
hold on,
pause. I'm going
please.
to take a breath. I'm going to actually, can I see what, if I said yes or I said no, how that feels first? Devotion is the feeling. And if it doesn't feel good, let's not override the feeling just because the discipline said you honor what you say you're going to do, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, I need to feel what that feels like. And the more we get into that habit, the more we start to do it. Checking in with ourselves, right? So I think with a lot of women, I think devotion sometimes is difficult because women don't, women struggle to vocalize or even be able to own that they have needs. And again, this is different for every woman, right? But can we check in on what those basic needs, right? The non-negotiables, what those look like? Is it water? Is it food? Is it movement? Is it a deep breath? You know what? I had an amazing conversation with my mom, and sometimes, and I know this is where I get this from, but sometimes all I need in that moment when I'm feeling that way is just a fucking hug,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think the need, if we were to check in with what we needed first before we created a story about what it meant about us, right? Maybe it's you needed space, you needed support, you needed a boundary, you needed maybe clarity, reassurance, whatever it is. Can I vocalize or hold space for myself to acknowledge what that need is and then be able to move and take my next best step from what that is rather than what I'm telling myself it should be? Because what is
Yeah.
that doing for us? Right? Again, that's where the cost then comes in. So putting up those guardrails, like taking a pause, inserting like what can work, right? The needs. And then also if you are overriding yourself and maybe saying yes too quickly, right? And I do this sometimes and I catch myself, but I override and I say, actually, wait, that's not going to work for me. Here's what does work for me, right? So, I can do this, or I'm needing to honor this. I'm needing to take a step back. There's a difference of overriding, or there's a difference of over explaining and then being able to repair or like
Mm-hmm.
adjust what you've said, right? So we don't
Yeah.
need to like explain ourselves in depth, but it's like, oh, actually, can I acknowledge what I can do? This is what I'm available for. Insert
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah. And then as you're trying to implement these different practices, keeping track of the things that are going to serve you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So don't focus on when you mess up because you're going to fuck up. It's why it's a practice, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
focus on what's my return rate, meaning like what are the times that I was able to come back after I had a stumble? Like how
Mm-hmm.
did I fail forward? How did I learn from that experience, right? How many times did I keep my promises to myself? Like how many times did I honor that devotion of, okay, well, this is what I want and this is what it takes to get there. And this is where I'm showing up for myself in that way. And that feels really good. What can I identify, like I said before, is that minimum viable rep? And like, how often am I doing that? Can I create a streak for myself around something that is realistic for my capacity in that season? So this is what is realistic for me right now. How much consistency can I create with that? And can I celebrate that? So I'm feeling like I'm supporting myself as I go. And then also that pre-decision regulating, right? Like how many of these choices are actually coming from a down-regulated place, aka breathing and taking that pause that's needed, reducing that sense of urgency, and how many are coming from, oh, I like jump to, I got to go ahead and take care of it. I got to fix it. I got to do all the things, right? So can I start to be aware of that and recognize where I'm making them from a downregulated place? So that way my RAS is more primed to seek out that behavior and continue to, for that to become the new default moving forward. All of this has to be intentional. People just want this shit to be like, yeah, I decided I was going to do this differently and then it's just going to happen that way. No, it doesn't. We're very habitual beings and things get ingrained, and it's like, we've talked about this before, those grooves in the sand, until you start to turn in a different direction and start to make that a new pattern, then shit's going to default back to the old way if we're not intentional about, okay, this is what I'm practicing, this is what I'm integrating, this is the new thing that I want to put in place, so that way I'm not getting the same old bullshit results that aren't working for me right now.
Right. Or still operating the same old bullshit story, right? What you've
Yeah.
done thus far, right? What you've
Right.
learned thus far, what you've implemented thus far has gotten you here. So if your goals are requiring something different of you, are you willing to do something different? Right. And that's where like leaning into the honesty of that is, it doesn't have to be this all or nothing mindset of doing something different. One step at a time, right? Is start to move in another direction. We have to create that momentum to get there.
Yeah. So in short, let's wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay. So devotion, again, anchors you into the present. The anchor, right? I mean, as women, like we have that sacral, like root connection. It anchors us into right here. This is the care. This is the meaning. This is the why. This is the courage to show up and try again. The courage to be available to what it is, whatever you need. Right? It's
To
the needs,
yourself.
it's the feelings, right? It's the worthiness, right? Like I'm devoted to what it is I need in this current moment, and also what I need in the future too, because I'm aware of that.
Yeah. And discipline holds the future. It is our self-protection and protection of our peace. It is our boundaries. It's the reps that I can live with day in and day out, right? But I'm going to continue to chip away towards the thing that I want. And then together, when we dance, when we find that rhythm, when we combine, when we find ourselves on the scale of the spectrum that suits us for that season of life, then we can create some self-loyal consistency and boost that self-trust over time.
Yeah. So a couple of reflection questions for you, right? If you're listening to this, where are you over devoted to the now and maybe avoiding a container that's getting you towards your future, right? What is it costing you to stay thinking in the present? And like, ask them.
Where are you over disciplined for tomorrow and abandoning your present today, right? Like, what is it costing me to stay thinking in the future all the time? What am I missing out on in the present?
Right. And whatever your answers are to that question, similarly within story work, right? There is no right or wrong answer. It's just, are you willing to listen to the answer that comes up? Because whatever it is that the answer that comes up, that could very well be the thing that helps you, right? To when I acknowledge that, now start to dance with both of these things. It may not feel uncomfortable. It may feel a little bit uncomfortable at first to listen to what that answer is, but if you're willing, right? This is where you can start to say, all right, this doesn't have to be decided for me. I get to decide.
Yeah. So pick the area, pick the domain, start to identify that for yourself, get curious, ask those reflection questions, start putting some rituals in place, identify your reps that you can take today, and reach out to us. If this is something that you feel like you're really struggling with, you can't wrap your mind around, DM us, let us know.
Yeah, where you can now request a reframe, right? Request a remix on maybe a dilemma, or maybe you want to run your own, like, discipline to devotion or devotion to discipline experiment. And if you have something that, if you're struggling with those hard swings, right? Because they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They're not very comfortable. If you're struggling with those hard swings and operating on one side or the other, send those in, because we would love to help you with that, and know that low and slow wins, right? Next best step, baby steps. awareness, all of that wins. And we're here to be the mirror for you. So we hope that you were able to see that, with two very different examples in front of you. We're so thankful that you guys are here listening. And yeah, we're excited to get into some future dilemmas. You will now be able to fill out those. It's in our Instagram bio. Send those in. It is anonymous. Like, share, subscribe, review, right? Share this episode with someone maybe who is operating in that uncomfortable swing between the two. And
yeah, don't be scared, ladies. Like, people, nobody wants to go first. People get hesitant about admitting things, or
yeah, normalize. It
ironing out their
happens.
struggles. But I can guarantee you, if you're experiencing it, other women are experiencing it too. So it can be helpful for everybody.
Yeah, and what can another woman hear from something you're experiencing that ultimately helps them with something they're experiencing, which is, again, the mirror. So I encourage you to send those in. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.
Rate and review 5 stars, please. We really appreciate it. It's all that we ask of you. It makes
that's
a huge difference for us.
If you can give us one Christmas present, we would like to see.
No, all I want for Christmas is 5 stars.
5 stars, 5-star reviews. All right, bye guys.
See ya.